Hello, good evening, and welcome to this evening's Mackmyra Swedish whiskey tasting. My name is Micky Plummer, and joining me, as always, this evening is my fellow brand ambassador and colleague, Richard Micky. Good evening, Rich.
Hello, good evening, Micky. Good evening, everyone joining from home.
So, guys, first of all, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Give us a shout out. Good evening, David from Fife. Brilliant. Happy with that. So, guys, like David's done, Kyle, brilliant, guys. Keep your good evenings and your hellos and your welcomes and what you're drinking and what you're thinking. Keep piling them in. This is a really good start, guys. Wow. Thank you. So, this is how the tasting's going to work this evening, guys. Okay. So, we're going to start off with a couple of brief announcements, evening tea. Then an introduction and history of Mackmyra. We'll keep that. We're going to try and keep it as short as possible so we can get onto the first dram as quickly as possible. So, Rich, with that in mind, what's going to be the running order this evening?
Yeah, right. So, running order will be starting with the Brooks whiskey, then the Mack, then the Grönt Te, green tea, the Svensk Ek or Svensk Ek, and then the Svensk Rök. Reason we're doing that is so that we can miss out a bit of history and do it when we get to the dram. So that's the reason for the order there.
Yeah, so like Rich said, we'll go through the whiskies. We'll discuss each whiskey as we go. And on that, we'll expand on some of our history and processes and all that sort of good stuff as well as we go through. So we suggest, guys, if you've not already done it, having a glass of water with you and a wee pet or a wee straw or something like that. Good evening, Stuart. Or something like that, guys, okay? Because sometimes you might want to add a wee bit of water to your dram as we go through. It's always good to keep hydrated. So, good, drink quality, not quantity, okay? So, Rich, with that in mind, before we get started, do we have any announcements, anything coming up?
Yeah, well, I think since the last time we did one of our sort of monthly tastings that we're doing now, we won a couple of awards, a couple of pretty cool ones in my humble opinion. But World Distiller of the Year and Sustainable Distiller of the Year in the Icons of Whiskey, run by the Whisky magazine. Something that we'll touch on some of those points and explain sort of, why we think we've been awarded those as we go through. Updates. I think we've got the last few bottles of Schussbar's Rook, Korsbar's Rock, for anyone that's sort of read it on one of our sites and wondered how to say it. Fuelmark and Motorheads. We've got the very last few bottles of those going live tomorrow at 7 o'clock, where they're very likely to sell out quite quickly. So if anyone's interested in those or wants to know any more, don't know what those bottles are to begin with, drop us a comment and let us know at some point, and we'll explain it as we go through the show. We've got a brand new whiskey out in March, one in our seasonal range. We'll explain what the seasonals are as we go through, but a new one coming out in March. I think start checking out our social media from tomorrow for little teasers and clues as to what it might be. Tomorrow, Mick, you and I, back at the Mackmyra Inn. Pub. Yeah, so join us at 6 o'clock on Facebook or YouTube. For our virtual pub, the Mackmyra Inn, where we're joined here by Charlie Metcalf, one of the brand ambassadors for the Balvenie, who I think Mick and I are both very excited to talk to and try some of the whiskies that we've received to jam along with Charlie on. That's for sure. I think that's about it update wise, Mick.
Yeah, I think that covers us for updates and stuff like that, Rich. Do you know what though? We should probably give the good, lovely people a wee present for this evening, shouldn't we? What should we give them? What offers have we got for them this evening?
So we've got a main offer for tonight that's live until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So anyone that wants to use it, you've got, I think, 12 hours starting from 5 minutes ago. You'll get, if you buy a Grönt Te, one of the whiskies that we've got this evening, whiskey number 3 in the lineup, the seasonal whiskey, you'll get 40% discount on any of the core range products. So one bottle of core range, you get 40% off of that as well. The code for it is Thirsty Thursday. But there will be a link that we put in the comments with a private link that will take you straight to it, so you don't need to put the code in if you so wish. But Thirsty Thursday will be the code. If you're someone that likes to sleep on things before they make any decisions about buying bottles, we're going to run a second offer that starts tomorrow, where you buy the Grönt Te again, and you'll get 20% off of a core range bottle, and that's running until the 28th, Mick, I think. 28th, yeah, thank you very much. So that's it, yeah. So if you want to buy something tonight, use the code checkout Thirsty Thursday, and you get 40% off a core range if you buy one of the Grönt Te bottles.
But that's not all, Rich, is it? That is not all.
Yeah, good little lead in. We'll do a giveaway. We'll do a giveaway to all the people who have joined us tonight and paid for a tasting pack to join this tasting. So we're going to give away a branded hip flask at some point. But Mick, I think you had an idea about how we're going to work that out.
We'll do it. We'll give it. We'll start the giveaway now, Rich. I think. Okay. So basically, guys, right? Our distillery is called Mackmyra, and there's lots of other distilleries out there, and some have got some weird and wonderful names, etc. So if you were to open your own distillery, okay, what would you call it and why? So fire those answers in, guys, for your chance to win the branded hit flask. And just before we have dram number 5, me and Rich will have a power scan through them, and we'll make some notes as they're coming in as well. Carl will flag them up for us, and me and Rich will decide on our favourite one at the end, basically. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a fastest finger first, guys, okay? But let us know. So, yeah, so to win a branded hit flask, let us know. If you were to open your own distillery, what would you call it and why?
Cool. Yeah, nice. So, should we go into the intro, Mick? We'll say just... if we have, before we go into it, as Mick said at the beginning, please comment. We've had quite a few comments to begin with. I assume people have been warming up before the tasting, perhaps. But let us know in the comments if this is your first ever virtual tasting. It's your first tasting with Mackmyra. Have you ever tried us before? Have you ever never heard of us but saw this advertised somewhere and thought you'd give it a go? Let us know, just so we can gauge who we've got in the audience tonight and sort of try and tailor our approach as such. But I think on that note, we'll do a bit of an intro and background into Mackmyra, Mick, and then into the first dram. Yeah. Mackmyra, where it's not just a distillery that was trying to have a Scottish sounding name. It is an actual place. It's situated about an hour and a half north of Stockholm, near the town of Gävle. The idea came about in 1998 when our 8 founding members were all on a skiing trip together. They'd all been friends since university. There we are. There's some of them here. All friends at university, and they went on an annual ski trip with each other, and used to bring bottles of whiskey along. And one fateful year, 98, somebody said, why is nobody in Sweden making malt whiskey? There had been a distillery in the late 50s, early 60s, thereabouts, making sort of grain whiskey, but and it shut since then. No one making any single malt. So they set about trying to do it, and first began producing December 1999. One of the things, or some of the things they set out to do, the founders, were to be quintessentially Swedish. Was a very important thing. So not just another Scottish distillery that was, in another country making something that everybody was used to. They saw it as their responsibility to try and set some precedents, maybe, or some traditions that other people might be able to follow in the future. So to be, quintessentially Swedish, we use all the ingredients we use are Swedish ingredients. Most of them come from a very close proximity within the distillery as well, or to the distillery, sorry, and some Swedish processes as well, which we'll touch on when we get to some of the drams in particular. Some things that not everyone else does in the world, but we do, based on some Swedish history and heritage, just to try and inject some sense of place into the whiskey that we have. As well as being Swedish, it was very important for them as well. They set out to be innovative and sustainable. I mentioned we won Sustainable Distillery of the Year, so that's they were very happy, let's say, for that. And being innovative, some of the whiskies that we have and approaches that we have are very innovative as well. And again, we'll touch on some of those when we get to them, especially the Grönt Te, I would say, probably one of the most innovative whiskies that I've tried in recent years. Yeah, we've been in 3 locations since we started. Basically the first few series of sheds and gardens, and then the Brooks Distillery in 2002, and then the Gravity Distillery, a big vertical distillery that we're in since 2012. We've got warehouses all over Sweden. We've got them on islands, mountains, and down in mines. and 3 key ranges, 2 of which we're trying this evening. So the core range, the seasonal range, and the moment range. And we're trying the core and the seasonal this evening. And we'll talk again a little bit more about what those are when we reach these whiskies, because that's what we're gunning to at the moment. So Angela D'Orazio, some people may have heard of her. She's our master blender. She's responsible for all of the whiskies we've got in front of us this evening. And here we go. That's it. So she's a Whiskey Magazine Hall of Famer. I think only the second woman to ever be inducted into it. And as I said, responsible for everything that we're drinking this evening. So she decides and creates in her lab, different whiskies or mixing different casks together to come up with the final products that we've got in front of us here. And I'd say, as like a whistle-stop tour, Mick, that's probably not bad for an intro and a background. Set the scene, set the tone. And I think pass over to you to talk about whiskey number 1, which is not that one.
It's not that one, is it? Good spot. That could have landed me in trouble. So, guys, believe it or not, we're not going to start with the Mac. We're going to start with the Brooks, as Rich did say at the beginning. Okay, so get yourself your Mac and pour yourself. You don't feel you have to pour the whole 5cl bottle into your glass, guys. Okay, just do half or whatever. I like to put the other half in the freezer and have it later on. But that's up to you if you want to do that. So coming in at a very strange ABV of 41.4%. It's always a good talking point, which we might cover later on. It's nice, it's light, it's bright, fruity, gently spiced, and as we like to kid on, breakfast friendly. Obviously we don't suggest drinking whiskey for breakfast. That could have some, but if we're all working from home, why not?
Well, maybe not for breakfast, Mick, but with breakfast, there might be a time and a place.
Pretty a better idea at time. A better idea.
Special occasion or something, yeah.
Definitely. So, guys, in this, we've used. It's quite a complex recipe we've used to achieve the taste profile for Brooks whiskey. So we've used 200-litre first fill bourbon casks, 100-litre first fill Swedish oak casks. 100-litre first fill sherry casks as well, and these are all from our elegant recipe. And we've used a 200-litre ex-bourbon smoketail cask as well. We'll talk about smoketail a little bit later on. And these are all pretty much from first fill quality, so we're getting really good interaction and from the wood, really, for those couple of years. So probably on average of about 8 years old. We don't have age statements. We prefer to go for flavour profiles, consistent flavour profiles, as opposed to going for age statements. And we find it works for us, really.
We're very much, it's flavour led, as you said,
yes.
Mick. It's and that not having them on there across the range allows Angela to be able to use any size cask that she wants. And anyone that might be new to whiskey that doesn't know, if you put an age statement on a whiskey, the youngest, even a single drop of whatever the youngest whiskey is in there, you need to put that age on the label. And what that means when you're a master blender, as Angela is, who makes our single malt and mixes all the casks together, by putting an age on there, you restrict the amount of casks that she can use. If you've got a 30-litre cask, as we have in several of the recipes this evening for the whiskies, they might be, have the right complexity and development ready after only 4, 5, 6 years, because they've got a faster development rate, because more sort of surface to liquid ratio. So by having no age statements on there, Angela can use these whiskies and create something that is what she thinks is delivering the right profile and the right flavour. So that's the reason why across the range you won't see us using them at all. Apart from one. Before we go into a few talking points and some history and stuff like that of the distillery, I'd like to wish Ian Martin, who's with us this evening on YouTube. Ian Martin, happy birthday, sir, from us, from us at Mackmyra, and from your friend Stuart Armstrong as well, guys. So have a great birthday, Slange, and Skull. Skull, yeah. Mick, that's a good shout there. I think if anyone watching from home does have any birthday shout outs, any big dates coming up, or just had, please let us know in the comments, and we'll give you a little shout out. We did ask at the beginning as well if people would let us know whether or not they're new to the game, and we've seen some We suggested for breakfast. Well, there you go. You've heard it from Laura there. Yeah, David, couldn't agree more. But yeah, we've also had some comments from people that it does look like it's their first time trying Mackmyra as well. So feel free to ask us any questions as we go. Anything that you want to know at all. Nothing's off limits. So yeah, and good evening to you, Tim, as well. But Mick, flavour-wise, what we're talking about, we're flavour-led distillery, and what sort of things do you find in this?
Foam bananas. That's the one I always get with this. Foam bananas. And those cheapy, like, well, it probably used to be 5p and now 10p. Or I don't know, you probably need a mortgage from these days. I don't know. But yeah, that's very, very there with me on this. You get a bit of hit of the soft alcohol, but you also get those nice soft fruits going through it as well. And it's always nice for me. You get a little touch of spice, and I mean a little touch of spice, and it's great for me. This one, Rich. What about yourself?
Well, that spice thing, so it's like a warm spice. I think as we progress through the range, we reach Suspense Ek, and you find out what sort of a spicy spice, if you will, is like. This is gentle and warming, like a little tickling spice on the finish for me, which adds that sweetness up front that you get, having that spicy element to it as well, just gives it that balance for me. I find every time, and I think balance is a word that I would use almost across every whiskey that we've got out. I don't know about you, Mick, but balance for me is sort of across the board. Yeah, definitely.
So, guys, we've started off with this one probably because it's got the softest. Anytime in, no problem. Enjoy your birthday, sir. It's pretty got the softest profile out of the ones we're gonna try this evening. But it's also, it allows us really to segue into like the early days of Mackmyra, the beginning. As it were, really. So Brooks Whisky named, and we'll cover that as we go through. But when we first began producing in 1999, a year after, Rich mentioned the dinner. They all brought malt whiskey with them to dinner. So a year later, just over a year later, we produced our first liquid. It was the 18th of December, 1999. Our founders, they had a tiny, literally a hand-built 100-litre still, which only gave out, like, there it is, in all its beauty. And that only gave us really like 30-litre hearts. What I mean by heart is the middle portion, the usable, enjoyable, drinkable, maturable portion of the spirit run.
The good stuff. The good stuff.
Yeah. Stuff that won't make you blind and not taste like rainwater at the other end, So the really good usable portion in the middle, which then led us on to, instead of doing 5-6 runs to fill up a 200-litre cask, we actually, thought, why not turn these casks into 30-litre casks? And therefore, the heart of everything Mackmyra has done since then really has been around our 30-litre casks. Yes, we do, for our bigger releases and stuff like that, we do use bigger casks, but the big heart of what we do really is around our 30-litre cask program, and the quality you can really get from that. But that's for another show that we've got coming up soon. But in 2002, we moved into our first big boy distillery, or big person's distillery. Should I say? Probably can't say big boy anymore, but our big distillery.
Big person distillery, I think.
Big person distillery, yeah. Our adults distillery, as it were. Our adults playground. And that's the Brooks distillery at Mackmyra Brook. So we brought in 2 big 4-5 stills and began producing a much higher volume of spirit. Our wash still is at 10,000 litres, and our spirit still is 7,000 litres. We stayed there. There you go. That's them being installed. It's beautiful. I never get tired of looking at that. It's lovely.
That's a great picture, that one, yeah.
Yeah. And we stayed there until 2011, 2012, really, where we sort of mothballed that and we opened up our Gravity distillery. But I'm not going to that. Rich will cover that on the next dram. The Brooks distillery allowed us to really grow and become a competitor, really, on a bigger scale. Not as big as some of the really big boys and stuff, but enough to start being noticed and start expanding our market outside of Sweden, etc. So most of the whiskey we're drinking this evening was in fact distilled at the Brooks Distillery. We're just, I think we're coming to the last drops of that, actually, I think. So Mackmyra. But everyone's probably thinking, what does Mackmyra mean? So we can break that down into two parts, Mac and Myra. Mac being like a small annoying insect, like a midge. Do you know what I mean? And Myra being a mire or a swamp. Do you know what I mean? So the midgy swamp, basically, a beautiful sounding Mackmyra translates into midgy swamp. So we'll get that romance out of the way, Rich. Eh?
That's always tickled me, that translation, because
it's brilliant.
Same as you, I was drinking Mackmyra, for probably a year or maybe a little more before actually getting the job here, and working at Mackmyra. And I had no idea about the translation until I was a few months in, and I just thought it was hilarious. So, Micky and I always include that translation in our tastings now, because we just want to pass that joy on to other people. Yeah, so midge bog, midge swamp.
And if you want to know what Brooks means in Brooks whiskey, Brooks or Mackmyra Brook, Brook basically means industrial, useful. There's quite a lot of meanings, translations for Brook, but Mackmyra Brook Distillery was an old power station, it was used for a couple of other things as well. It become quite industrial. That area in general was quite industrial, quite useful, and that's where we got the name Brook from, basically. So, Alan, what are you saying? What are your guys' thoughts on the Little Brown? Is that the Little Brown one?
Yeah, I tried that. So, we mentioned that's
on Friday.
Is that launched today, tomorrow, Mick? When's it out?
That was launched 23 minutes ago on littlebrown.com. Is it .com?
Alan's a mate, a whiskey mate of mine, in a few different groups actually as well. Alan, I can say it's delicious. I tried it last Friday. Mick's got half a bottle of him behind him now, because he's gone through half a bottle in a week. No joking. It's delicious. That is delicious. New American oak, so virgin oak, and very, very, very good. Works very well with our sort of our character, our spirit character.
Yeah, it's hitting Little Brown Dog this evening, and it's going to be available in other shops. Rewatch Fridays. Mackmyra in, and Andrew will talk you through it in a bit better detail.
Yes, yeah. You can find that on our YouTube or on Facebook. But be interesting to hear from people in the comments. Anyone that's got any tasting notes, anything that's jumped out of the glass. We will say there are no wrong answers as it goes with nosing or tasting anything. Very strong pair, yeah, that's for sure. And I think you'll certainly find that on the next one as well. I imagine you will. I like that. That's up there now. That
is potentially the front runner at the moment.
Yeah, that's in the mix. That's in the mix. That's for sure. But yeah, let us know. Let us know what if you can find. Micky mentioned foam bananas. That's one of the things that for the nose especially jumps straight out at me. But always curious to hear what people can find. And as I said, it's all so subjective that there are no wrong answers. Just let us. If you think you can find something and you can put a name to it, it's there. So just let us know what you're thinking. Oh.
So while we wait for some comments to come in, Rich, should probably crack on with the second dram, though, eh?
Yeah, I think. Should we move to the Mac? Yeah, very drinkable, lovely on the nose. Say that. I'll just see mine off first, so let these come in. Yeah.
Well, Mrs. C's given the thumbs up to the Mac too, but that's starting early. You've jumped the gun there.
They're a bit bored of us waffling on, Mick, so we'll move into the.
I don't blame them, Rick. That's what you get for turning up to the monthly tasting. Do you know what I mean? We go in, we get right to the bits of it.
Oh, so yeah, so whiskey number 2 for everyone at home. So we're on the Mac, this one, and there we go. What we're looking at here is Mac and Mac. So Carl, the person pulling all the strings in the background, who's our producer, fellow brand ambassador, that is his kitten, Mac, or now cat, I expect to have moved up a notch. But that's Mac and Mac that we see there. And we might have another picture or two soon or throughout the evening of Mac, because we'd like to see a bit more of him. So the Mac, 40% ABV. Completely matured in American oak, so new American oak. Whereas most of our whiskies really have relatively or actually, you know, quite complex cask recipes. As Micky went through with the Brooks, there's a number of different casks and different sizes and things have gone into that. With this, very simple, all in just American oak. And with that, you get, so our spirit character, our, you know, what we call our DNA would be, you know, fruity, spicy, you know, a little herbaceous note here or there, perhaps. And you put that into New American oak, where you get lots of vanillas, vanilla flavors, caramels, you know, some sort of
Caramels,
toffees. That's it. So sort of rich sweetness and lots of sweetness. So that you might associate with bourbon. Any bourbon drinkers out there, or anyone who sort of tried a good bourbon or two, you know, a lot of that sweetness will come from. I mean, they use corn, of course, instead of barley. But where some sweetness will come from, but a lot of it really will come from that New American oak that has to be matured in. So we've used that for this. So you get that sweetness with some of those fruits as well. So someone mentioned earlier they found pear in the Brooks whiskey. For me, I get that it's like electric pear for me in this. It's just pear fudge and pear drops as well. And definitely, you know, you mentioned there, Mick, you know, toffee and vanilla and things as well. Loads of that. Yeah, all day long. So sort of orchard fruits. Think for me anyway, orchard fruits and warm sweetness and things. Yeah. Mick, yourself?
No, definitely, mate. Same as yourself, Rich. I don't tend to have this a lot by itself, even though it is great by itself. I tend to use this as a base for quite a few cocktails that I like putting together. Probably one of the more simple ones is in actually, was it Stephanie Salter? Well, mentioning her distillery name, which I thought was really quite funny. But from that particular retailer, you can buy an apple, a fizzy apple and pear juice, which I put with the Mac over ice, which is lovely. I know I'm not even going to read that out because we are before 9 o'clock, you know, Stephanie. We are before 9 o'clock.
That's a great one, though. I will say that's in the mix. That's for sure. I'll say that, yeah. Strong caramel, yeah, definitely. So yeah, caramel for sure. Yeah, that and that really will come from that's coming from the casks. Caramel isn't something that, although you know you might find it. I said earlier, if you think you can find it in our other whiskies that might not have had New American oak in, it will exist, but it's not part of our spirit character necessarily. So that caramel flavor will come from the influence of the casks that it's been in. So New American oak, you know, very, very sweet. That would, yeah. So charred American oak, I will say, yeah. So yeah, so let us know some of the comments, and in the comments, sorry, you know, what you're finding, what you're not finding. If you think we're talking nonsense and you can't find any of that sort of thing, or just let us know whether or not you enjoy it. Mick and I don't profess to be sommeliers. I think it's fair to say, Mick. You know, so if someone just wants to say nice or not. You'll see most of my tasting notes on the sheets that I keep will generally be, I like that one, I like that more than the other one, that sort of thing. So throw it in, yeah. Really subtle, good one to introduce friends to whiskey. I'd say, yeah, it's very approachable. So the sort of backstory to this particular whiskey is it was designed to be by Angela to be something that could work well on its own as a single malt, but also be versatile, you know, and as Micky mentioned, putting it into cocktails and things like that. So to fit in a price point, so for this, you're looking at the sort of low mid 30s in terms of pounds and pence, and it has to go up against quite a lot of whiskies in that sort of price range. It's very competitive around there as well. So making it approachable, something that people want to come back and drink more or introduce to friends, I think was something that was in Angela's mind. But talking about this whiskey, Mick, maybe I'll talk a little bit about the Gravity Distillery, because this was the first whiskey.
The very first one.
That's it, yeah. So as Mick mentioned, just about all of the other whiskies we've had tonight have come from the Brooks Distillery, the original main distillery that we had. But in 2012, we moved into the Gravity Distillery. So here we can see it there. So the front portion, the glass frontage there, the upper part of the windows, you will see the fermentation tanks that we have, and the sort of mid part, we'll see where the stills are, where everything is distilled. The very top, you can just about make out there. There's a balcony. There's the top floor is a a bar cafe, sort of, with a big viewing room across the forests where the distillery is. So production began there in 2012. The building itself, 35 meters tall, 7 stories, roof bar at the top. Called it the Gravity Distillery because on the back of the distillery is 2 big green silos where the barley, the malted barley, is elevated all the way to the top. It goes to the 6th floor because the top is obviously the roof bar, 6th floor, and then each floor on the way down is the next stage of the production process. So instead of a traditional distillery pumping things from one room to the next and using a lot of energy in the process, we harness the power of gravity, hence the name Gravity Distillery. So each floor on the way down, it basically falls from one floor to the next. We saved about 45% on energy consumption when we moved into the Gravity Distillery compared to the Brooks Distillery. So it was substantial. You can see here a little cross section of the process on the way down. Milling and mashing, fermentation, distillation, and then the bottom floor being the sort of new make store. It's not just about using gravity though. We have a self-contained power system where we our heat that's produced and that happens at several stages of it is captured and then recycled throughout different parts of the distillery. It can either go into helping to heat the stills themselves and the liquid within, or just into keeping the lights running in the offices and things like that as well. So it just sort of helps with the power or heating the areas where people will be. It's fueled by biopellets, so we have a little self-contained power station to the side of the distillery, fueled by biopellets, and some of those biopellets come from our own draff. Draff being the physical matter that's left over after your barley has been rinsed of all of its starches and sugars, and you're left with that the husks of the barley there. Anyone who has been on a distillery tour in Scotland may well have heard about happy cows, because the draff gets sent off to local farmers. I'll say that the cows are happy because they're being fed, not because there's any alcohol in that draff at this point. But our draff, instead of going off to make the cows in the local area happy, it goes off to a facility, gets turned into biopellets and sent back to us. So there's really very little waste throughout the entire process, and as much as we can recycle, or as much anything that we can gets recycled. The bottle stoppers, just a quick digression, but the bottle stoppers on top of the whiskies, we've got 2 types. We've got these wooden ones which are made from excess cask staves when we convert our larger casks into smaller ones of 30 litres, so that wood gets used in those. And then we've got some other ones that have metal stoppers where the cask hoops are recycled into and turned into bottle stoppers for it as well. So packaging even gets our packaging's recycled. So very sustainable, hence winning the award that we have this year. As to gravity distilleries in the world, currently, to mine and Micky's knowledge, we're the only one in production. There's plans for one in Leith in Edinburgh. It's being built. Okay, yeah. So it's being built in Edinburgh now, which I think hopefully, we're the first to do it, but hopefully we see a trend across the world, people doing it. It makes sense. Urban areas such as Edinburgh, you can build a distillery, on a small square footage, basically, because obviously it's going up. And hopefully we see more of them. And I think that's the Gravity Distillery, I think, in a nutshell, basically. Yeah. So I'm just going to wet my whistle, because that was a rather long monologue and my throat's quite dry now. So
okay, before you do that, guys, a couple of people asked for some cocktail recommendations. This is perfect for an old fashioned. Take yourself a small tumbler, pop in a wee spoonful of sugar or a sugar lump, couple of bits of Angostura, a couple of dashes of Angostura bitters, and a touch of water. Give that a good mix around. Pop your ice cube in and pour over your whiskey, and then give that a really good stir around, and then finish that off with a garnish of either a nice orange peel, a nice good bit of orange peel squeezed over the top, or lemon peel, and that's always a good one. Another one, like I mentioned at the beginning, is for a simple highball. You can get a fizzy apple and pear juice from Marks and Spencer's, and probably some other places do it in that as well. It's the only place I've seen that particular one. That in a tall glass over ice with a nice double of the Mac, or you could do a version of a Vesper Martini. 3 parts gin, 1 part Mac, 1 part Lillet Blanc. I use that one for the green tea, but yeah, and then garnish that with a twist of lemon or lime peel, basically. So that's 3 quite fairly easy ones to do, guys.
You say easy. I've never been able to do that twist. I see a bit with a twist of the thing. I'll try and do this and that, and it ends up just either snapping or just being a straight thing. So
the idea is just do a bit bigger, do something a bit bigger than you think you're going to need.
Okay. Okay.
Give that a right good. So you can really get your fingers around it to give it a good.
When you say bigger, do you mean wider or longer or both or what?
Probably a bit longer. Longer.
Okay, maybe that's the thing. Yeah.
Not too thick, or not too wide, should I say? Because that will help it come back. But if you do it slightly bit longer and a bit thinner, or a bit narrower, should I say, that should be able to give you a decent twist. Hello, Rich, is that you? So I think that's Rich disappeared for the moment. So guys, any comments on the Mac? That'd be really, really good. Anybody has got any other cocktail suggestions? That's also really helpful. But yeah, so with that, I don't have anything to bounce off of, Rich. Guys, remember, if you want to win a Mackmyra branded hit flask, all you need to do is tell us if you were to build your own distillery, what would you call it and why? We've had a couple of good entries so far. So keep them coming in. That's really good. The whiskey chamber is nice one, Eve. I like that one. That's pretty cool. Nice, simple, to the point. I like it. Very simple indeed. So while we're waiting for Rich to come back, we'll crack on with dram number 3, and that will be the Grönt Te. So the Grönt Te, or green tea, 46. So this is a big jump up, guys. Okay, we've gone from 41.4 to 40. Now we're jumping up to 46.1. For the casks for this, we've used newly saturated Ex-Oloroso casks at 128 litres. 128 litres. Sorry, excuse me. New and first fill Oloroso, 100 and 200 litre first fill bourbon, and 100 litre first fill Swedish oak casks. Now, what do I mean by newly saturated? So what we did is we took 4 Japanese green teas. Excuse me, my Japanese is quite bad. So Karibo Hochicha, Yami Gyokuru, Yami Matcha, and Yami Sencha. And we made those 4 teas up individually with a combination of neutral grain spirit and Oloroso. And we put them into Ex-Oloroso casks. And we left that tea and Oloroso mixture in there for about 18 months to really get it into the wood, etc. And then what we did, we emptied that concoction out and then put liquid in there that come from the first fill Oloroso casks, the first fill bourbon casks, and the first fill Swedish oak casks, and put it into those green tea saturated casks to marry for about 8 months. So that liquid could then pick that up before everything come back together. This for me, this is the world's first green tea finished whiskey, basically. And for me, this was just phenomenal. So Angela was allowed to do this because, like we said at the beginning, Angela was inducted into the Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame at the back end of 2019. And recognition of that, the board at Mackmyra, the big bosses at Mackmyra said, Angela, congratulations. What do you want to do? So her pet project at the time, an R&D project that was ongoing for about 3.5 years, with a lovely lady called Yuko Ono, who's a Japanese lady living in Sweden, and what she does is she imports Japanese green tea into the Nordic countries, basically, for distribution. And yeah, so she does. So they work together because one of Angela's passions is traveling and Japan, etc. Which is really nice. So to be able to take your job, mix it with your passion, and get the sign off, and to produce something this amazing, I think it is that anyway. So we released this last year, a year ago, actually, just coming up for a year ago. And when we first got to try this, it was like, I don't know what this is going to be like. And every time I go back to it, it changes for me quite a bit. Every sip, you can leave it for a while or straight out the bottle. And as the bottle goes down in that as well, it's forever changing. You know, it's been out for a year, done numerous tastings with it, and I always get different things with it. I like to play about with this. I like to use this in the Macatini that Carl showed the picture of there earlier, which I gave so just take out the Mac and put in the Grönt Te instead. And it's lovely. I really can't. Those are quite strong. So maybe only just the one before dinner. Okay, in good old James Bond style. But yeah. So loving the Grönt Te, brilliant, Laura. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you like it. Is there any particular notes out there, guys, that you say that you're saying? Oh, Rich, nice of you to join us.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mick. That's not just me trying to get my own back for last month. That's I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I've transferred to a different device.
We've gone through why green tea was made. We've gone through who Angela collaborated with. What was your initial thoughts, Rich, on when we released green tea? Because obviously that was roughly just at the start of when we started our Mackmyra journey, really.
Yeah, my initial thoughts were, I don't know if I'm going to like this. Just because I'd never tried anything like it before, heard, anyone even sort of mention the prospect of doing something with green tea. I like a green tea, sort of the standard fare that you get, in a bag, not the green teas that would have gone into this, the things that you're supposed to simmer at 60 degrees Celsius for a minute at a time or whatever it might be. But as soon as I tried it, genuinely, I loved it immediately. The first time I tried it, I think it was my second or third ever shift, and we were at Milroy's with our boss Shane, who was hosting a tasting there, the Soho branch of Milroy's, and they'd had a five dram tasting, so what we're doing this evening basically, and the green tea was just about to come out. And Shane just happened to have a few samples there, so he went round and poured a few sample drams for people, and then at the end when they took the vote, the Grönt Te, the green tea, won the day. Which I think everybody that had it being poured into their glass was probably thinking similar to me. Maybe they're being more generous and thinking, well, I'll try it and see what happens. But that really is immediately the reaction to it was just. I'm not saying everyone at home here, needs to like it. If you just tried it and it's not your favourite or anything, then there's nothing wrong with your taste buds. It's so subjective, obviously, all of whiskey and everything that we do. But really, for me, and I know many people, very positive reaction to it after trying it. I would say.
Yeah. It's found its whiskey fighting.
Yeah, whiskey fighting. I think that's a good way of wording it. I would say. So I've still got the Mac in my glass, so I better just finish that up and catch up. And well done treading water, Mick, while I was away.
Easy.
Let it never be said that you can't fill a gap. I would say you've got enough words to go around.
Yeah. So Laura's loving it. Sean Waits is definitely be ordering a bottle, so that's great. Don't forget the flash offer we've got on there, Sean. Get yourself 40% off any core range bottle when you use Thursday. So make sure you use that, pal, and get yourself a good save in there. Who was that? Graham was lucky enough to visit the Yamazaki distillery this time last year. Nice. No matcha whiskies there. Well, I did say we were the world's first to do it, Graham. Do you know what I mean? We even beat the Japanese green tea whiskey. So when this come out, this really does lend itself quite well as well to how the Japanese youth quite enjoy their whiskey. Sorry, excuse me. So they quite like in the young team, as it were, in Japan, over 18, obviously, quite like enjoying their whiskies in highballs. So a nice double whiskey in a tall glass over ice and topped up with soda water.
Yeah, they do something else where it's just a whiskey and water as well, which is very popular in Japan.
Yeah.
Just whiskey and water. I know a lot of Japanese businessmen and women after a long shift in busy Tokyo will go. There's lots of bars where that's like quite a standard thing to drink. I read Dave Broom in The Way of Whiskey, his book about Japanese culture and whiskies and how they intertwine. Speaking about it, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but they do something where they'll put a mixture of water and whiskey into a fridge overnight for 24 hours. And it adds a bit similar to mixer. I mean, I know we didn't touch on it greatly, but you're talking about you like to put your Brooks whiskey in the freezer for an hour or so before tasting, and you get that sort of umami mouthfeel thing comes with it. But maybe not necessarily the umami flavors, because obviously it's mouthfeel and flavor with it in the freezer. But you put water and whiskey into a fridge for 24 hours. It really brings it all out. And for the life of me, I can't remember what they call it. Perhaps if somebody's read that book or knows, perhaps whoever it was that's been to Japan to visit the Yamazaki distillery, they might know the answer. But there's a name for it.
Nice one, Eve. Glad you're enjoying them, Paul. Glad you're enjoying them. So Kyle's got his hands full by the looks of it, trying to watch this, host a Zoom session, and watch the Europa League. Fair enough, Paul. So Stephanie doesn't drink tea and tends to shy away from anything with tea in it. But this doesn't taste it tea drier than others, and quite a different mouthfeel, much nicer than I thought it would be. All right, cool. Yeah, so it clings to the glass more as well. So that would be the higher alcohol. So like I said, guys, we've gone from 41.4 down to 40, up to 46.1. That taking it over means it's non-chill filtered, means it's non-color corrected. And it's beautiful, and it will take, like Tim said, it will take a little touch of water with it as well, really nicely.
Yeah, I think it for me.
Okay. Yeah,
for me, I add a drop of water to this. Not always. I don't know if it depends what I've eaten that day or the mood that I'm in, but a drop of water, it really does change it as well. Just sort of opens it up and takes it to another level, I think.
Definitely. So before we move on to Svensk Gek with Rich, guys, please, like I said before this one, let us know to win a hit flask. Let us know if you were to open your own distillery, what would you call it and why? There's definitely one stand. There's some great entries so far. But there's really one standout winner at the moment, which are not. What one was that one? Carl, can you put that one back, please?
Was it the M&S one for you, Mick, or was it this? Yeah, this one.
Distillery would be the water of lifesaver, because everyone needs whiskey in their life. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think for me at the moment, Rich, it's good. It's got to be Nat's Hole.
For me at the moment, that's the one to beat. That's the one to beat.
Brilliant.
Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry because I'm a little bit behind you. I'll get through this a moment there, but green apples for me on this. I can't say that I find a great deal of green tea notes in there, being a green tea drinker. But again, these green teas are different ones that you buy in the supermarket.
Sorry, Rich, I'm going to go on a wee mini rant, right? And it's not against anybody in particular, but Darren, just to allay your fears there, guys. Okay, we haven't taken the Scottish way of spelling. There isn't a particular way to spell your whiskey like that. It doesn't mean if you've spelled it whiskey, it's the Scottish way. Only really Ireland and America, and there are a couple of exceptions even within that, spell it with the E. Okay, but the majority of the world spell whiskey without an E. It's not a protected Scottish way of spelling it, guys. The only protected thing, a Scottish way, is Scotch. Yeah, Scotch whiskey is the only protected phraseology. Whiskey with an E or without an E, yeah. So, like I said, with an E, mainly Ireland and America. There are a couple of exceptions within that, yeah. But the majority of the world spell whiskey without an E. We keep seeing on our social media feeds, yeah, people getting all bent up and twisted about, you spelled it the Scottish way. Make sure you get an E in there. No, actually, no. The majority of the world spell whiskey without an E. And breathe. Rant over.
I'll jump in and help you stop them and just say, if anyone's wondering, the things that grind mine and Mick's gears, for me, it's the happy cows. The happy cows thing, the myth. That's something that grinds my gears. And Mick, for anyone that was wondering what might grind his gears, I think he's just laid that out for everyone to see. So yeah, on that joyous note, we'll move on to the Svensk Ek. Yeah.
He's lovely. Glasses are emptied before you think about adding water. That's cool. See if you can drink it and you find it perfectly fine without water. Yeah. Brilliant. No bother whatsoever.
It's a great sign, basically. If you're drinking it without even thinking about it. Mick and I host a lot of tastings. We attend as many as we host, with various clubs that we're a part of. And I try and always remember to add a drop or two of water just to see what happens and test it. And sometimes, yeah, as we just saw there, I don't bother because I just forget that that's what I wanted to do. I enjoy the whiskey too much, and all of a sudden I'm at the end of the glass. But Mickey said at the beginning, you don't need to pour, the whole 5cl in the glass if you don't want. I would recommend for any virtual tasting, really, especially when you have samples, the generous size that we have, to keep a little bit back anyway. Not for the sake of drinking responsibly, which obviously we do encourage, but if anything, just to go back at the end of a tasting and see what you think of it after having a few others, or be able to compare it from whiskey 4 to whiskey 1, that sort of thing. So but if you do pour it and you do drink it, all good on you, and we hope you enjoy yourselves. Yeah. So Svensk Ek, Swedish oak, the translation here. I'll just pour myself a glass. Again, same as the last, the Grönt Te at 46.1% ABV, and I mentioned earlier about how our sort of spirit character, our new make sort of DNA would be orchard fruits, fruity, some spices and a bit herbaceous. And Mick mentioned you did mention actually about the Brooks whiskey, so we spoke then about warm, gentle spices to it, whereas this for me is like spicy, fruity, like robust. Robust's the word for it. It's like full-bodied, so yeah, again, this is on the more simple side of cask recipes that we use. This is so all of the whiskey that we use in this starts its life maturing in ex-bourbon barrels. So with those, you get that sweetness and things come through from the influence from the bourbon. And again, we spoke, American oak, some of those caramels and vanillas will come through. A bit lessened because it's had bourbon in there before, so not quite as sweet, but some sweetness still there. But for the last 18 months of this liquid's life, 10% of that whiskey is taken out of ex-bourbon casks and put into Swedish oak casks. And Swedish oak, European oak compared to American oak, generally speaking, is far fewer wood sugars, lignins and things like that, and many more tannins. And tannins, you get that sort of that bitterness maybe, and that sort of that full-bodied vibe and that mouthfeel. If anyone knows about wine, that more tannic it is, the sort of more mouthfeel you might have. I think, I'm not a big wine expert by any means, but I think that's generally speaking that's correct. So Swedish oak is like that, but the next step up from European oak, because it grows so slowly in Sweden. So Mick, this I said spicy, fruity, robust. I've heard people say sawdust and things like that in there, and what do you usually find?
Yeah, so with me, the side, I always feel like that's what it does for the spicy, but you can really get the fruits on this. I remember that white pepper spicy on the back of the tongue. This one really does take a splash of water quite well. Sorry, mate. Fantastic.
Because I've changed device, it's balancing on my other laptop at the moment. So I'll get ready to duck and dive and dip and weave when the camera moves around. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mick, I rudely interrupted you with my camera.
Okay. No, so I get the fruitiness. that's well within our makeup, but it's dialed down a little bit. Really, the sweetness is dialed back a little bit because of the influence of the Swedish oak, and I do get it's a bit more nutty, and I get a bit of white pepper on the finish. I get a bit of sting on the tongue, and this one does take a drop of water really quite well.
So a comment from Carl there saying steady on, which I can only assume was about me just then. So cheers for the tip, Carl. So yeah, I like that nuttiness to it. That's for sure. Yeah, definitely more of that. And I mentioned a bit more of a bitter profile, perhaps. Where especially for the Mac and the Brooks whiskey, quite sweet, soft profiles or characteristics to it. But that bitterness, I wouldn't want that word bitter to put anyone off. I mean, what I tend to use as an example for bitter as a profile or a note would be, dark chocolate compared to milk chocolate, basically. So dark chocolate is some bitterness to it, but it's still, if you like dark chocolate, of course, delicious. But not bitter to the point that it is something you'd reject. It's just another part of balance. I said earlier, right at the start of the tasting. Across pretty much every one of the whiskies that we have, what Angela looks for is to try and achieve balance and complexity. So you'll rarely ever find anything that's one-dimensional with us. There will always be some complexity to it. The more, the better. And I think having that sweetness, and you and I just talked about that the ex-bourbon influence, as well as our sort of fruity spirit character, combined with the elements and the characteristics that come with Swedish oak, I think that gives it a great balance. And very interesting. I've always thought that just 10% of that liquid for 18 months and that's it was the magic number for Angela, because Swedish oak is so powerful and so influential and has so much to give, that anything more than that, anything longer or a higher proportion of liquid going into it, that balance wasn't there. It all of a sudden became too tannic, too bitter. So 10%, 18 months, that was the sweet spot. But interested to know, what people think of it at home. There we go. Oh, that's not a bad nail copper. Yeah.
It's not the name of a distillery, Stuart. So yeah, maybe. I don't know. Probably they probably wouldn't let you have that. They wouldn't let you have that.
Yeah, we can't. I don't think we can award it to anyone that would get anyone in trouble. I'd say.
No, maybe. I definitely not know. But the one review described that it's a fresh lichen on Harbour Rock. Yeah. So me and Rich always bring this up on our tastings. Not that particular tasting though, by the way, but that's probably a really, really good example of that. What if anybody can tell me the last time they tasted what was it? Hints of fresh lichen on a Harbour Rock. If you can let me know the last time you did that, that'd be great. And I've got a few questions for you. I have got a few questions for you. Mainly, what were you doing? Did you slip over in the harbour?
I've eaten a bit of lichen before, Mick. I've nibbled on a bit of lichen in the past. Say a bit of fresh seaweed on the beach, all sorts of
seaweed on the beach. You've got to try seaweed, don't you?
Yeah.
Normally your dad puts you into it. Say, "Oh, it's really good for you, son. Eat a bit of seaweed." Yeah, Dad, you've got to dry it out and treat it first. Do you know what I mean? Not just like fresh off the beach with the chemical output just up the road, like, you know what I mean? But I like Ian Martin's birthday boy's distillery name have to be the No E Whiskey Distillery. After my mini rant. Yeah. No, well, the thing with that there as well is obviously, unlike some countries, we've not really got a traditional governing body. Like we like to say, we like to stick. We like to pay respect to the tradition of whiskey making, which I think we do. But also at the same time, we like to push the boundaries a little bit as well, because we're not shackled by the same authorities that like say Scotch whiskies with the SWA. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what it does allow us to do is push the envelope a little bit, really, and we get to do things like Swedish oak. We get to do things like green tea, berry wine, stuff like that.
Different natural wines, fruit wines as well, which you wouldn't often find elsewhere. So I think what we say, stay respecting the tradition, but also looking to innovate and what we can do for the future as well. So we follow all the same rules. Single malt, malted barley, batch distillation, copper pot stills, and then 3 years in wood, in traditional wood. We use oak. Everything like that is followed. But after that, all bets are off, more or less. We and we'll touch on that when we get to the final dram. Again, another thing that we do that nobody else does. We're in the smoking process as well that Mick will tell us about. Just thinking, Mick, the Swedish oak story, the tale of Swedish oak, if I may, I'll jump in
I think we need to, Rich. I think we need to.
Yeah, so oak has been around in Sweden for a long time, but only really in the southern parts of Sweden, where the climate is sort of a bit more accommodating to oak and less pine. But in the 1830s, so a long time ago, Swedish king decided that there was not enough oak around for building ships for the future, and he was thinking, as any good statesperson would do, think about the future, several generations ahead. So they embarked upon an enormous project of planting oak trees all around the south of Sweden, and in particular, in our case, where our oak comes from for our Swedish oak casks, the island of Visingsö, which is my more or less spot on, if I do say so myself, pronunciation of it. But it's not bad, Mick, right? Yeah, but Visingo is how I said it, because that's how I read it before. In Lake Vättern, which is sort of just south of Stockholm. They went around planting lots of oak trees to be able to build, ships in the future for commerce, for empire building. It takes about 150 years, give or take, to grow an oak tree to where it's sort of mature and ready to be felled and turned into a ship or whatever it might be. 1830s they set about planting hundreds of thousands of oak trees around, and 33 years later, the first ironclad ships were built. France first, and then in the Americas, in the American Civil War, the first two there on either side of the battle of the war. After 30 years, the oak trees, the reason they're planted for was more or less obsolete, and by the time they were ready in the 1970s and 1980s, a telegram goes to Naval High Command and say, we've got your trips, your trees ready to build your ships. And they said, well, we've been building iron ships or steel ships for a century now, so you can keep them. But what that meant was plenty of wood left over to be built or to be turned into casks for us, or all sorts of other things. So one of the quite incredibly clever, I would say, ways that they made these particular oak trees appropriate for building ships was to make them grow straight and tall. I think one of the pictures that Carl showed us at the beginning when I was talking about oak there, you can just see how tall and straight and skinny these oak trees are. You would not recognize them. Here we go. Yeah, you wouldn't recognize them as an oak tree if you look at them on the right there. If you're joining us from the UK, it doesn't look like it at all. To do that and to get them and encourage them to grow in that way, they planted in between these rows other trees, so elm and birch, two of many different types that they used, so that the oak would just keep growing up and up, searching for that sunlight, trying to get as high as it could. Fewer branches coming out of the trees on its sides, which you can't really make much with. Too many knots obviously come with it then. So to encourage them to grow straight and tall, planted lots of trees in the middle, which I just think it's sort of rudimentary technology perhaps, but just quite ingenious at the same time. And I thought that was awesome. So now these oak trees, they're many of them are just left because there's not the demand for their usage and things, but lots go into flooring and for us casks, and they're very specially selected trees as well. There's 5 generations of family, the same family that lived on Visingsö and looked after this particular forest there, and they're the people that select the trees that go into our casks. So that's a little bit of Swedish oak history, I think, and something that it was always tickled me that 30 years after they were planted, they were just the steel ships started sailing the seas, and no need for them for their original purpose, at least.
I quite like that one, Laura. That's a pretty good sciencey type one. Newton's Grönt Te distillery. Graham's likes it. Harbour Rock Distillery. Like it, guys. Honestly, keep these distillery names coming in because we're going to have a wee look at them in a minute and announce a winner for the hit flask, basically. So, guys, what are your thoughts on the Swedish oak? I noticed somebody wasn't doing it for them. I will say this will definitely take a wee splash of water. If you find the pepperiness in it a little bit too spicy and it's hindering you a little bit, definitely add a little touch of water till you're happy. It will really do something for it. That's right, Stephanie. It's not all about the alcohol. We need something to talk about while we're drinking the alcohol. So that's why we have to introduce a bit of the history and stuff.
I like a good story. I mean, if you look behind, I know, Mick, you're the same as me. You look behind us, you can see, we buy more whiskey than we could sort of drink really. And with that, we like to have a story attached to it. It needs to be a genuine story. It's not just, sort of marketing talk and things like that as well. Because Mick and I, we're Mackmyra men, but we're whiskey people. That's we definitely are. And I like to have a little bit of background, something that adds another element to it and just gives you an idea or a sense a bit deeper into what that whiskey is or where it's come from, that sort of thing. Adds to the romance, perhaps, or at least just makes it a bit more interesting. Perhaps.
Stories and reasons, Rich. Stories and reasons, not just cause.
Yeah. But then, if you are just into it for the alcohol and the flavors and things, please responsibly, obviously. But if you are into it for that, good on you, and you're very welcome as well.
Okay, cool. So last call for any more names for the distillery. We'll give that 60 seconds or so. I'm pretty confident. I know what's winning it for me, Rich. There's been some cracking entries so far as well, guys. Some absolutely fantastic entries so far, and some good witty ones that have come in. But there's definitely one standout for me, Rich. What about you?
I'm having a look through now because you had the benefit of my monologues there. You've been able to keep up with the comments a bit better than me. But that Gravy. Where was that Newton's thing? I do quite like that one as well. That's I've just spotted that from someone. That Newton's Gravy Tea. I quite like that. There's a couple of little plays on the things we've been talking about tonight. There's that's a creative one, I'd say. Yeah. Enjoy that. Yeah.
That would probably be my second choice.
Well, so yeah. Before we move in. To the final dram, but let's have a look.
Gaelic for drunk badger.
That's right. That's a strong contender coming out. Yeah, cutting the final furlong.
Strong contender. Pretending this tasting, I'll call it Glengailing, being Swedish. But it depends on how you pronounce that, Gailen, because obviously you've got Glengyle, which is Kilkerran. They can't call their whiskey Kilkerran because the Loch Lomond Group own the name Glengyle.
Right. So there's a bit of other. They can't call it Glengyle, so they call it Kilkerran because Loch Lomond.
Because Loch Lomond own the naming rights for Glengyle.
Is that Mick? You might know better than me about that. Was that not like a whiskey brand or something that came out in the 80s and hasn't been around for some time? Or
probably, yeah. They still own it.
Yeah. Cool. So.
So that's why Glengyle Distillery produced Kilkerran whiskey, not Glengyle whiskey,
which is delicious, whatever you call it. I'll say, big fan.
I think you might have a fight on your hands there. Yeah. For the name for that one, unfortunately.
Clear my palate.
I'm in a quandary, Rich. I'm in a quandary between two.
You're happy just having a look through it. I'd say that let's move into the next dram and then keep considering things as we go.
Right. I like it. We'll announce the winner then. We'll announce the winner after this next dram.
Yeah.
Which, ladies and gentlemen, the last dram of the evening, unfortunately, and that would be Svensk Rök, or Swedish Smoke. One of my favourites. It's probably my favourite out of the core range. But yeah. So, Svensk Rök, again, this is up at our you'll notice that our last two have been at 46.1, and when you go into our seasonal range as well, they're all 46.1. That's Angela's magic number, basically. It's just above the cut-off point for that would require chill filtration and colour correction, basically. But this is lovely.
I love it.
Smoky, yeah, but without being a big punch in the face. There's a bit of it's got a bit of herbaceousness about it, like you get through, through our Mackmyra DNA. Oh, love this. So all the casks were from 30 litre to 128 litre in size, and they consisted of American oak, Swedish oak, and ex-bourbon and casks, ex-bourbon casks that were also saturated with Oloroso. So it's quite a good mixture of flavours in there as well. But we do have a bit of a special peating process, which we'll talk through in a moment as well. But no, really, what do you think to this? I mean, me and Rich both like quite heavily peated drams anyway. But this is probably what I would call, what would you call it, like a gateway peated dram.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe, yeah, because I think quite often we find a lot of the virtual tastings we do anyway, the comments that come through, some people say, well, there tends to be always one that says, I don't like peated drams, but this is something that sort of smoke and get into. I think when some people anyway, perhaps, you think peat, you hear peat, the mind goes to the, sort of southeastern Isla, the three down on the end of it there. Very big, heavy, medicinal smoke, sort of really in your face sort of smoke. But that isn't what peat is. Peat, some of it can be, yeah, but it depends where the peat comes from. What biomatter and organisms and things have gone into making that peat. What the environment where it is. If you take certain Highland drams, perhaps, or distilleries that use a Highland peat, it's more of a heathery sort of smoke to it, and it's slightly sweeter. I might not call it sweet, but on the sweeter side of it, not quite as medicinal. That iodine TCP sort of isn't there. I think with this is to me more smoke than it is medicinal. Or what I might have, a few years ago, I might have thought peat was. I always thought it was just that one thing, a binary, note. When really, actually, it's a very broad. It tends to be a very broad sort of descriptor, or can be used with it. So yes, so smoke for me, a gateway into it maybe. But then you and I, seasoned, smoky whiskey drinkers, and this for me, I don't drink it and think, oh, that's a bit of a soft touch. It's a bit too much of a gateway thing for me. There's enough smoke here. There's enough complexity to it for me to really enjoy it. Yeah, Paul. Yeah, I think. There we go. So Jeanette. If you're sensitive to smoke, you'll definitely get a lot of it on this. If you're in the middle, like me and Mick are, it's at that right sort of sweet spot. Yeah. Hands up. It'd be interesting to see who's gone for all 5 centilitres.
I think this is probably, if we were to do a vote now on which is your favourite of the night, I think Svensk Grønt is going to be it's going to be maybe just edging its nose in front, Rich.
Well, it's a funny one to judge because we tend to get people more chatty after drams 3, 4, and 5, as you and I both become a little looser. Let's say we all roll in it together. So we always get a lot of people when we get to dram 5 and we get to the smoky one saying this is my favourite, this is my favourite. But I wonder if that data's skewed because we're all feeling a little looser as we get to the 5th one of the evening, perhaps. But we'll do a little tally, perhaps. We'll start one in a moment. Everyone let us know what their favourites were, and either score them, top to bottom, or just let us know which your favourite one was. And it was always interesting for us to see.
Before we get into the bit more about the smokiness, guys, don't forget, if you really do like this one, you want 40% off of it. What you need to do is look at the bottom of the screen at the moment now for the flash offer. You buy a Grönt Te and get 40% off any of the core range bottles. So the core range bottles, just to remind you, is the Brooks whiskey that we tried first, then the Mac, the Svensk Ek, and the Svensk Grønt that we're currently trying, guys. Okay, and that's use the code Thirsty Thursday. That's a proper tongue twister, especially after the 5 drams.
My friend, and I mention this on almost every tasting I do with this, because as soon as you said it to me, I don't know if it's just a power of suggestion, but I've never got it out of my head. So he said on the nose, like campfire in the rain. So, you know, it's got this sort of smoke to it, but also like this sort of like a damp smoke, like a wet smoke. So campfire in the rain, or, you know, during the summer, if you've had a charcoal barbecue and you come out in the morning after it's been, you know, either the dew or a bit of rain overnight, perhaps, and you're near that charcoal barbecue there, just that sort of that, wet smoke. That's the only sort of way to describe it. But as soon as you said it to me, I've never been able to get it out of my head. Campfire in the rain. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on, Stephanie. Yeah, absolutely right there, love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nope, it does not.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. It's a softer, more approachable, perhaps, way into smoky whiskey. So it's white peat, Mick, isn't it, that we use? So it's the top layer. What's the difference between, getting a top layer of peat and getting something that was perhaps a bit more condensed and a bit further down?
So it becomes obviously it's a lot more compacted down near the bottom. So there's more oily flavors, deeper flavors, or you know what I mean. That process has been there for a lot longer. Do you know what I mean? So if we just take off a couple of inches, that means the peat bogs can stay sustainable and that as well. So which is really quite important for us.
Yeah, key. Yeah.
So, guys, let's go into our peating process. It's got a unique twist. So we're one of the only distilleries in the world, less than 10 actually, that we actually floor malt and smoke in-house our own smoky barley recipe, basically. Now we peat to 60 ppm, which is quite high. Yeah, most of your Islay boys are in it between the 40 and 50 mark. We're up at 60, but you'll not realise that in the actual whiskey itself, okay? Because we only use 23% of our peated malted barley. Honestly, man.
Like, it's about 5 whiskies in, Mick. I think everyone will be quite sympathetic to that sort of thing.
I've been pouring small ones as well. Honestly, I'm just not having a great day today. So what we do, we use 23% of our peated malted barley and put it with our elegant recipe, our unmalted barley. So that works out. So what is it? Be 1,500 kilograms per batch. So that works out to, out of that 1,500 kilogram batch for a smoky run, 350 kilograms of that is our peated barley. So that obviously brings that overall ppm level down, and then that's reduced by 2/3 again on completion of distillation as well. So you'll get into it. It's a lot easier to get into. It's not a big punch in the nose or in the throat either. What makes this uniquely Swedish in the peating process? Well, we actually use juniper twigs. So the local power company, when they go about their business and cutting away juniper branches and bushes and stuff like that from around power lines and junction boxes and everything like that, they don't just want to throw it away and burn it. They actually give it to us. So we'll use the berries over in our gin production, and we'll use the branches. We'll dry the branches out, and we'll use the branches on top of a wood fire in our smoker. So what happens there is we build a fire of wood, and then there's a shelf on top of that where we put the peat from the Karen Mossen or the Karen Bog, which is about 50 kilometers away from the distillery. So like we said, everything's fairly local. And then on top of the peat, once that's going nicely, we put a good layer of juniper branches on there. That's the peat, and the fire's rejuvenated every 4 hours, and the smoking process takes a couple of days. And it's lovely. So what happens? They build the fire, and it goes. The smoke then goes up through a pipe and then onto a molten floor. So I noticed somebody asked how do we impart the peaty flavour into the malt. So we help to dry the malt in barley. We help to dry that with the peat smoke basically as it's drying out, and we use that.
So I've always found that interesting because when I first started going on distillery tours, probably not too long ago, 2016, 2015 maybe, lots of people told me that, nearly all the flavour, or the way they talked about it, was that, most of the flavour comes from the cask, It depends if that's how you've set your distillery up to be. That will be true, of course, but it's not exclusively true. And I think to get peated flavour into something, that comes at the very beginning of the process. So smoke, when you have if you can find smoky notes in a whiskey, sometimes if it's not peated barley, if it's not smoked barley, that will come from heavy charring of the cask itself, where the inside of the cask then becomes very black and burned. It encourages interaction with the liquid that's inside. Some people can pick up smoke on that, but for the most part, if you're finding smoke in a whiskey, it's because it's peated barley, and that flavour comes in at the very beginning of the process, as you just mentioned, Mick. So when you're malting your barley, you're making it warm and moist to trick that barley into germinating and becoming active. And then to stop that process from carrying on too long, and the barley eating its own sugars and starches and going sort of too far, you have to stop it. And you do that by heating it and drying it. And traditionally, wherever you were from, wherever your distillery is based, a century ago, 2 centuries ago, you had to use the heat source that you had in the area, which for lots of places, in particular, that's in Scotland, would have been peat, would have been this, incredibly immature coal that you can find, sort of towards the surface level of certain areas of Scotland and of the world. So they would use that as their heat source to then smoke out and dry the barley. And while you're doing that, while you're burning that peat, and with us, a small amount of juniper branches on top of that peat, that smoke infuses itself into the barley. So that's where peated flavor comes from in a peated whiskey. It starts at the very beginning of the process, basically at the beginning of the process. And then that barley goes through, and eventually becomes liquid, and all the sugars and starches come out of it. But that smoke stays throughout the process. It can be reduced depending on what you're doing with it. You can get very geeky with that. But smoke comes from the very beginning. And that's, for us, as Mick said, that heritage, the Swedish heritage and tradition I mentioned at the very beginning when we did our quick intro into Mackmyra, that's thousands of years of Swedish or Scandinavian tradition. When they're curing meats for the winter season, or fish, or whatever it might be, they used to throw some juniper twigs onto those fires to put a bit more flavor into that meat, because after you've dried it out and it's been there for a few months, it could be quite tough and not a lot of flavor left in it. But by using juniper branches, they could infuse some flavor into it at the same time. So that's why, one of the reasons why we do it, to be that quintessential Swedish vibe, for want of a better term. I think vibe's the only word I can think of 5 drams deep, but to give it that Swedish feel and that sense of place. So that's how you get smoke, generally speaking. That's how you get smoke into a whiskey, or peat. Yeah, we've seen a few comments coming. Yeah, so Vin, hello Vin, good evening, thank you for joining us. Vin came to host one of our tastings, a co-host of No Nonsense Whiskey, as you can see his name there. One of the more popular YouTubers, I think that's the term, reviewing whiskey. Lots and lots of people watching Vin to see what he thinks about stuff. And he actually voted or decided that Grönt Te, the green tea whiskey, was his whiskey of 2020. So he came to host a month ago, when it's all moving into one day for me at the minute. But good to have you with us. So here we go. So from Bob, Ek first, Grönt Te, Rook Mac. Yeah, I saw something else pop up from someone a moment ago as well that I wanted to highlight. I think there was just a few people that were saying that peat wasn't on their list before, more or less.
You've enjoyed the Rook tonight, which is good.
Yeah, and just like you said, Mick, this is the sort of whiskey where people can actually find all of a sudden. Peat doesn't have to be this incredibly big, off-putting thing. If it has put you off before, there are ways of getting an approachable thing. So hopefully, this has been an important part for some people's whiskey journey, I'd say. Because,
not all peated whiskies off-putting, guys. Okay.
Yeah, and even on Islay, there are some distilleries on Islay that don't use Islay peat; they use Highland peat, which gives you that sort of heathery sweetness as well. So I wouldn't rule out, if you'd ruled out all of Islay before because you thought it was a bit too much, some of it for your particular palate, there are definitely some distilleries there that you should have a look at as well. Yes. Trying to talk and read these comments at the same time is very difficult.
No, give me a bit. So Rich, I think we need to we need to announce a winner for our competition.
Yeah.
There's two that I've picked, and I can't choose between them. So if we agree, then we might just send them both a hit flask.
Okay. So for me, and I've kept up as best as I can with them there. The two that I've mentioned, the gravity one, the Newton's gravity, and Nat's Hole is for me, Mick. I don't know what your two were.
Well, I was going for Nat's Hole and the one about the drunk badger.
Oh, that drunk badger one was a good one.
Drunk badger.
Yeah,
both just pure comedy value. They were both brilliant.
Okay, so what are we going to do? Because I mean that's
so
three.
We picked three there, haven't we?
Yeah, I think they should send three out.
Do you know what? That's what we'll do. Stuff it, Rich. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, cool. Right.
So Carl, can you flash up the three that we've chosen, please? So I think it was it Laura for the Newton's gravity. This is where we need to make Carl.
Right, so what's happening now, everyone, is Carl was just in a panic going back through all the comments trying to find those ones there. So what we'll do in the meantime to help him out is see, Mick, you and I can have a look at some of these people that have commented saying what their favourites are. So Sean has said here, favourite, Svensk Rook. Number 2, Svensk Grönt Te, Mack and Brooks Whisky. Eve, if that's how we say it, Eve. Not sure what your favourite is, but 4 out of 5 are great. I think that was all right. Bank balance has decreased. Yeah, well, good for you. Thanks for joining the Mackmyra family. If this is your first foray into buying some of our bottles. What else have we got here? Bob, Svensk first, Grönt Te, Rook, and Mack. Okay. And Vin, we've got here Vin, Grönt Te number 1. No surprises there. Rook, Mack and Brooks. So Mack and Brooks is the last 3 that I've read there in the sort of the 4 and 5 mark. That doesn't necessarily mean people might not be saying they're not enjoying them, but they're enjoying the others the most, or maybe they're not. Who knows? But I think for me personally, I don't want to skew any results coming in, but that's for me. It's Grönt Te, Svensk Rook, Svensk are the top 3, and depending on what day of the week it is, which tasting Mick and I are on, what I've eaten that day, the general company that I'm in, whatever music might be on in the background would determine which would be my favourite then. But I think tonight is the Svensk Rook is my favourite tonight. Yeah.
So guys, the 3 winners that we've chosen. So I really do apologise that we can't remember who said what, but so the person that chimed in with Nat's Hole as a distillery name, the drunk badger, the tipsy badger, and then what was your one, Rich?
The Newton's.
So
I think that was the most highbrow one that I think I enjoyed.
Pure comedy value.
I think that's how I couldn't call it highbrow, but I can call it enjoyable. So yeah.
So guys, if those 3 people that said them, if you can DM us on Facebook and give us all your details, and we shall get your hit flasks sent out to you. Okay. So honestly, this has been a good laugh this evening. I've liked it, but unfortunately, we need to start wrapping up a wee bit.
Mick, if I can jump in 1 second. There's just a question from Charles. Sorry, Charles. So is PT whiskey as popular in Sweden as it is in the UK? Yes. Yeah, They love peated whiskey in Sweden, and I think Sweden might be, well, if it's not the busiest country for things like whiskey clubs and associations and societies, it is definitely in the top 1 or 2% of countries in the world. For the enthusiasts and the geeks, whiskey folk. Sweden is right up there, and peated whiskey, smoky whiskey, is very high up on the agenda in Sweden. That's for sure. Yeah.
So a couple of other comments, guys, before we quickly start to wrap things up. Stephanie, join in. Great, glad you enjoyed the Brook and the Mack the most. If you want to know how we got into this sort of thing, come over to the Mackmyra Inn one night and shoot us a question from there. And we'll happily tell you. In fact, we talked a little bit about that, Rich, did we not? The other week with who did we have on? And we spoke about how we got into it. Jamie.
We were talking with Jamie from the Glen Turret.
Jamie from Glen Turret, yeah. And obviously, tomorrow night we're on with another brand ambassador for the Balvenie, so Charles. Charlie. So that'll be good. So tune in then, guys, and fire those questions away. T, a new member to the team in Germany. Good to have you with us, pal. Definitely see you again tomorrow. And guys, thanks very much for the great comments. Really been a really fun, engaging session with you tonight. By the way, it's been really, really good. Eve, yes. So for the three people that we chose, they're getting hit flask. Yes, the 3 people. We couldn't narrow it down to one. So our 3 favourites: Nat's Hole, Tipsy Badger, but in Doric, Tipsy Badger and
Newton's Grabby
Te.
Yeah, Grabby Te.
Quite enjoyed them. So guys, you've let us know what your favourites are. You've been really engaging tonight. Rich, can you just sum us up with our current deal this evening, please, sir?
Yeah, cool. Well timed actually, because Philip Droz had just said that Thirsty Thursday not working on the site. It should be. What we'll get Carl to post a link in the comments, Philip, and to anyone else who the code might not have worked for, or the direct link where you don't need to put the code in. Carl will pop that in the comment any moment now. But yeah, Thirsty Thursday. You go through to check out, and there should be something there where you can pop it in. But if you are and it's not working, fear not, Carl will sort you out. So things we've got coming up, we mentioned we've got Friday, so tomorrow at 7 o'clock, just as Mick and I will be wrapping up in the Inn, our virtual pub. You see the final few bottles of 2 of our moments, which are we've tried the core and the seasonal tonight. The moment range is the next one up, where bottles will no more than 4,000 at a time, quite often fewer. KBR, Shush Barsh Rook, Cause Bars Rock, if you see it on the website, and you're like me and you just say it as you see it. There's only 1,500, I think, of those, and we've got the very final few available in the UK going live tomorrow. So the Shush Barsh Rook, Fjallmark, and Motorheads, and they will be gone, probably not too long after 7 o'clock tomorrow. We've got a new seasonal whiskey out in March. Start checking out our social media channels, and that's a good plug, or time to plug and say, remember to please like and subscribe. It does make a massive difference to us. We're a small brand in the UK, and we're really trying to grow as much as we can, and where we can build a community around us and things. So please do like and subscribe if you think you'd be interested in hearing about any other shows we're doing in the future. We do lots of giveaways, we do all sorts of things. So join us, and tomorrow, Mick, you and I, we're back, as you mentioned a moment ago.
Back to the pub tomorrow. Woohoo!
Back to our Friday night post, end of the working week virtual pub, where Charlie Metcalf of the Balvenie is coming to join us, and we'll talk about a couple of new releases they've got coming out. One in particular that we're very much looking forward to trying, and just general pub chat. Basically, it's not too formal, it's not too structured. We just have a few things we know we're going to talk about, and then see where things end up. Mick, you've had through the Little Brown Dog a new independent bottling release.
We went live with their single cask 12-year-old Mackmyra from Virgin American Oak. That's now on sale for £69 through littlebrown.com. So I think they've got a couple left. So jump on and get yourself one of them if you fancy something a little bit different and single cask, basically. Yeah. And it's lovely. It is lovely. But that's a whole other aside. Quick question from Eve: is there a miniature of the Shush Bosh Rook listed anywhere?
I don't think
not on
there
the
is.
spot at the moment. No.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there would be, and I think
we have.
That's it.
Sorry about that.
But it's cherry 4 casks gone into it. 2 of them have had cherry wine in previously. It's smoky without being smoky, right? So it's got a smoke hint to it, but it's not a big peat forward thing at all. It's oily and heavy, and
if you get yourself a full bottle of it, you won't be disappointed, I promise.
Yeah.
So guys, that's literally all we have time for. We are going to thank you very much again for joining us. It's been an absolute blast this evening. Really thank you very much for joining us. You've been amazing. We are going to leave you with a wee video. It is in Swedish with English subtitles. One of our founders, Magnus, talking about the smoking process, really. So from myself, Skål, Rich.
Skål, and thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, Mick, and everyone that's joined us. Thank you for all the comments and being so interactive with us as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Good night, guys.
Yeah. Skål.
Magnus, berätta, det fatet du precis har buteljerat, det var med det rökiga receptet.
Det var extra rök till och med. Extra rök Oloroso. Det är,
till och med extra rök?
Ja, det är riktigt kraftfullt.
Extra allt?
Extra allt och rätt så gammalt också. Det har legat 10 år ungefär.
Berätta om det här med röken, för det är väldigt speciellt, den svenska och Mackmyra-typiska röken.
Ja, men vi sa ju det från början att vi vill ha något riktigt svenskt. Ett svenskt recept med alla svenska råvaror. Och det eleganta utan röket, det var kanske inte så svårt. Men det rökiga, det fanns ingen rök i Sverige, så vi byggde ju röken själva. Och den första byggde vi och testkörde hemma i min trädgård i Hässelby. Så grannarna började undra vad 17 är det som röker liksom. Det kom ingen brandkår, vi avbröt innan. Och sen så körde vi ut den här röken, den här kölnan till Annikas sommarställe vid havet. Därav är bilden på etiketten på de här flaskorna. Och sen så en lång tid därefter så byggde vi egna rökare i större skala. Mälteriet som vi har där borta, där vi mältar, och sen så skottar vi över det här in i den här röken som är byggd av en gammal sjöcontainer. Och sen så stoppar vi svensk torv från Karinmossen här borta 5 mil. Det är en gammal Östersjöbotten, 10 000 år gammal, som vi eldar på i kaminen här. Så vi lägger dem här uppe. Så lägger vi lite ved under för att tända brasan. Och så får vi glöd på de här grejerna. Och längst upp så tar vi då enris. Där det blir riktiga svenska delikatessmaken av det rökta svenska. Och allt det där blåser in under den här perforerade botten. Där ligger ett 10 centimeter lager av svenskt korn från Enköping. Och Rolf Klingbergs gård som ja, men när man kan se kornet på vaja.
Och spårbarheten och hela
ja,
den här resan.
hela det. Och det är ju fantastiskt att kunna buteljera just det fatet som varit med så pass länge också då. Det är riktigt svensk rök hela vägen.